Today's story is titled, They Should Not Be Called a Murder of Crows, by UnfamiliarFondue. The link to the story is in the description below. Please enjoy. Today marks the 5th year my dad has been missing. My mom believes he had another episode, and instead of just getting angry, he decided to run away from us. But I know the truth. The crows took him. I was there 5 years ago on my 10th birthday, watching him struggle to push the curved metal pipe through the net of my new home batting cage.
Fuck! Hector, get your ass over here and hold the other end of the pole up.
He stared directly at me, sweat burning his eyes red as his annoyance turned into anger. I hurried over and grabbed the pole, but once he let go, the weight caused it to rotate in my hands. Wrapping it under my arm didn't help as it continued to slip towards the ground. My dad slammed the net down and grabbed me by the back of my neck.
Are you serious? How are you expecting to be able to make it anywhere if you can't even handle a damn pole?
He lifted me up and made me stare directly into his bright red eyes.
I spent way too much time and money for you to be this useless.
My dad tossed me onto my back and went over to grab my Little League baseball bat. Tears were streaming down my face as I frantically pleaded with him. I'm sorry, Dad. I won't drop it this time. Please, Dad. I'm sorry I'm useless. I promise I'll do better. I pissed myself as he approached me, and my pleas turned into incoherent babbles. The anger radiating from him began to mix with disgust and disappointment as he looked down at me. He began to beat the net with my bat, his yelling sounding like a roar as he swung wildly when the net wrapped around the tip of the bat. He eventually got it off and turned his attention to one of the trees in our yard. I watched as he destroyed the bark, each swing rattling the trees until a nest fell, glancing his shoulder on the way down. He turned to stomp on the nest, and I saw yolk splatter beneath his shoes. Suddenly, a few crows descended from the sky to attack my dad. He swung around like a wild animal, eventually clipping one of them on the wings, and it crashed in front of me. It looked directly at me, its fear matching my reflection in its eye. My dad stomped over and repeatedly slammed the bat down on the crow. I watched in horror as it turned into mince. The sky became dark as our surroundings were deafened by the sound of crows cawing. We both looked up to see a black mass eclipsing the sun above us. Then, hundreds of crows descended upon my dad, engulfing him. His screams for help barely escaping as I took him into the sky and disappeared into the sun. I laid there for almost an hour until my mom got back from the store. The rest of my birthday was a blur. The only thing I remember was my mom crying and blaming me for my dad leaving us. Her snide remarks continued over the years, eventually evolving into strikes. My dad's anger developed in me alongside puberty. I poured that anger and newfound strength into baseball, my only escape from my home life. My mom would get drunk on the anniversary of my dad leaving, and this year wasn't different. She repeatedly punched my shoulder and back, as I was now tall enough to move my head out of the way, yelling in my ear about how this was all my fault. My dad's anger grew inside of me until it finally burst, and I punched my mom's nose. Confusion set in my mom's face as she touched the trickling blood. I swung my fist again, which connected with her right eye, and she stumbled back into the kitchen table. I felt so large at that moment as the adrenaline surged within me, and I began to approach her again until I heard a caw outside. I stood in my kitchen staring into the yard for several minutes. My mom sitting at the table, tilting her head back and holding a bag of frozen vegetables against her eye. Once the bleeding stopped, she called me a useless piece of shit and stormed out of the house. I didn't care, as my attention was on a murder of crows perched in the now diseased tree my dad struck. Fear and anger were churning in my chest as I stared out at them. I contemplated what to do, as the echo of my dad calling me useless repeated in my mind, allowing my anger to outgrow the fear as I grabbed my bat from the garage and made my way outside. The murder stayed perched in the tree, ignoring my presence as to confirm my uselessness. My rage brought me to the tree, and I began to strike its soft trunk. My mind went blank as I repeatedly struck the tree, only stopping to move out of the way when it fell. The crows flocked onto the ground, taunting me. I began to wildly swing at them, hearing a crunch as my bat connected with one of their heads, atomizing it. Darkness surrounded me, and I covered my ears as their caws grew. I was brought to my knees when a portion of them rammed the back of my leg, swinging my bat in retaliation. It fell from my grasp as they clawed and pecked at my wrist. I clambered to the ground and tried to crawl back to my house, but their claws sunk into my back and my neck as they lifted me off of the ground. The rest of the flock surrounded me, and I felt their wings beat me as all the light was drowned out. We flew what felt like hours. The holes in my neck that painfully sagged due to my weight began to feel relief as the crows released me and I began to float. I was surrounded by what seemed like thousands of crows whose wings thundered around me. The only light coming from the edge of the eclipse in front of me, which slowly formed into an eye of a massive crow. A figure inside its pupil began to form, and I assumed it was my reflection until I saw multiple crows picking apart his flesh. He noticed me, and his face warped into a scream.
"Hector, please help me!"
My dad pleaded as the crows continued their meal. His pleas became incomprehensible as a crow tore out his tongue. They made me watch as they picked all of his meat to the bone. His skeleton floated on the other side of the eye, perfectly mirroring me. I felt a sharp, burning pain on the soles of my feet as the crows swooped by, taking pieces of flesh in their beaks. I tried to get away to no avail, as I was slowly disassembled, crying the whole time. I exhausted all my tears by the time they got to my ribcage. My vision slowly became unblurred as I peered back into the pupil. I saw the bottom half of a mutilated naked man as my consumed flesh began to grow onto my father's skeleton. An agonizing wheeze left my lungs as the crows tore a hole into them. The crows eventually made their way to my eyes, plucking out the right one and consuming it. Half of my vision was gone for a second, followed by a bright light that eventually dimmed, revealing my reflection to each other. I was horrified as my minced body watched the last quadrant of my unconsumed head be consumed. Both sides of me experiencing each other's pain as portions of my brain were eaten and transferred. Eventually, I was fully consumed and remade on the other side of the eye. My new body tightened down as the scars from my experience formed. The skeleton floated on the other side of the eye, perfectly mirroring me. Felt a sharp burning pain on the soles of my feet as the crows swooped by, taking pieces of flesh into their beaks. Tears began to form in my eyes again as I watched as my flesh formed on the skeleton. The torturous cycle continuing throughout never-ending generations. They should not be called a murder of crows. That would imply that they would let me die.